A view filter in Revit allows us to filter the way that certain elements inside of a Revit view display. In this instance, what I'd like to do is create a condition where we can see the fire rating for each of our different kinds of major walls inside of our building. To do this, we first need to set our drawing up. And what I'd like to do is zoom in here, select on one of these exterior walls, then go to its properties, select on Edit Type, and there's going to be an option called Fire Rating. And in this case, I'm just going to type in the number 2. It could say 2 hour, it could say really anything along those lines. But for this example, it's just going to be 2 for a 2-hour fire rating. And click on OK. Now, because this is a type property, it means that all the walls of this type now have a 2-hour fire rating associated with it. Just to see this, if I select on this wall, which is the same type of wall, then go to Edit Type, you can see that it also has 2 next to the fire rating. Now, I want to do the same thing with some of these interior walls. So I'm going to select on this wall. Let's go to Edit Type here, and let's see if it has any number in here. It does not have a number for the fire rating, so I'm going to call this a 1, and click on OK. Now for what it is that we're doing and how we want to display it, which is see the different walls that have certain fire ratings, this should be good enough for us. Now the next thing we need to do is create a filter which will allow us to see those elements a little bit differently so they kind of stand out on the sheet. To do that, underneath View, over toward the left-hand side, there's a button called Filters. Right now, there are no filters loaded into this project. So what I like to do is create 2 new filters. So I'm going to select on the word New for the first time, and this one I'm going to just label 1 hour. You can either define the criteria or select it, and depending on your version of Revit, these buttons might look a little bit different. For right now, just leave the defaults and click on OK. From here, I'm going to go into my filters, and I have a 1-hour filter set up. And what I'd like to do is for this filter, I'd like to have it apply to all my walls. So I'm just going to put a check mark here next to walls. From here, there's an option called Filter By. Well, I want to filter it by the fire rating. And I want to filter it so that it equals 1. Now, there's an important thing to remember here. If in your fire rating you typed in something other than 1, such as 1 hour, if it's 1 hour, you need to make sure that even the capitalization is exactly the same way as how you typed it in. In this example, you can see I have 1 in a capital H. If that's what I did in my fire rating on my walls, it would care whether or not it's a capital H or not a capital H, and it would recognize it as being 2 different things, capital H or not. So make sure that you have it exactly the same, and then click on OK to that. Go through the same process again. In this case, I'm going to call it 2. I'm going to filter it by, once again, walls. And by the way, if I wanted to do this for any door that had a 1-hour fire rating, I could just put a check mark next to the word doors here on the list, and it would get that filter applied to it as well. In this case, I'm going to come back over here to Filter By. Once again, fire rating. In this case, I want it to be 2. Now that I've done that, I'm going to click on OK down here. So now we have a 1-hour fire rating, and this just says 2, though it could say 2 hour. It doesn't really matter at this point. I'm going to click on OK to that, and we'll notice that nothing amazing has happened on the screen. Everything still looks the same. And the reason is all we've done is created the filter that could then get applied to any view on our project. From here, we need to apply that filter to the individual views. So to accomplish that, we need to go into the visibility graphics of the view. And you can either type the letter V twice on the keyboard, or just select the Edit button next to Visibility Graphics. When you do this, over on the far right-hand side, you'll notice there's a tab called Filters. Click on that, and now we want to add 2 filters to this view. The first one we want to add is going to be the 1 hour. We want to make sure that it's visible. If you ever want to filter something out so you can't see it at all, create a filter that has the properties of those kinds of objects, and then just clear the check mark next to visible, and anything that would be those properties you'd no longer be able to see. In this case, I definitely want to see my 1 hour, so we're going to put a check mark there. Underneath Cut and Lines, I'll make the color of those lines be a green color. There's an option here that says Pattern. Well, pattern is only going to affect such things as do you want these to be a dash line or a hidden line or a center line. So if you want those to display as being a different pattern, you could do that. I'm just going to click on OK to that. But there's also an option here that's patterns with an override button here as well. And I'm going to select on that. And for the color of this pattern, I'm going to make it be a yellow. For the pattern itself, I'd like it to be a solid fill. And click on OK. Now I want to add one more to it, and this is going to be the 2. We're going to click inside of here where it has the number 2. We'll get the same kinds of overrides. In this case, I'm going to leave the outside lines as being black. But for the pattern, I'm going to change its color to being a red color. So these are going to be really bold and really stand out. And I will point out that I could choose any of these patterns off of the list, so these walls don't have to be solid. They can have any symbology that we'd like them to have. But I will pick solid fill for this example and click on OK. Now, if we click on OK again, we can now see that all the walls that are a 2-hour fire rating are a solid red color. Everything that's a number 1 hour fire rating, has those green lines that I specified as well as that yellow interior fill. In fact, if we zoom out, we'll see every wall that has those properties inside of this view, and only inside of this view, have those colors. So filters can be used to allow us to see things like fire rating. Maybe if it's mechanical systems going through the building, we'd be able to see airflow going through the mechanical systems. Anything that has a certain property associated with it, we can filter it and have it display any way that we wish. In recap, you can set those filters up underneath View and Filters. Then to have them display in the individual views, you need to go into the Visibility Graphics and set up the appropriate filter and the way it should display underneath this Visibility Graphics Overrides dialog box.